Have you ever paid a company to rob you? Because millions of people did exactly that. They mailed their spit, they got ancestry trivia, and learned, hey, I'm 4% Scandinavian. Cool. Except you handed over the one data set they could never change, your genetic code. And here's how we all got played. And it's not good. DNA kits, those were sold at a loss. The product was never the cute little tube. It was your genome. Permanent, irreversible, and when the company collapsed, your DNA became inventory on a bankruptcy balance sheet. What does that mean? It means your DNA is currently sitting in bankruptcy proceedings being argued over by lawyers you'll never meet. So stick around, because if you hold customer data you wouldn't want sold at auction, you need to hear what happens when your promises wind up in bankruptcy court. Coming up, what happens to your personal private data when a company dies? This is the story of 23andMe. And this is Cybercrime Junkies. September 2024. You're running 23andMe. You've got millions of genetic profiles in your database. Each one contains ancestry data, health markers, genetic predispositions, stuff people paid you to analyze, stuff they trusted you to protect. And then on the same day, your entire board of directors quits. Not one, not two, all of them simultaneously. That's not drama. That's a power struggle. That's people who've seen the balance sheet and are deciding they don't want their names on what comes next. Because here's what they knew. A year earlier in 2023, you got breached. Millions of profiles were compromised. And unlike a credit card number, you can't just cancel DNA and get a new one. The data damage was permanent and changeable. Your customers just became permanently exposed forever. 23andMe had millions of genetic profiles in their database when the breach hit in 2023. Millions. Each one containing ancestry data, health markers, genetic predispositions. The kind of information you can't change even if you want to. See, your DNA doesn't get a password reset, which means every single person who mailed in that little tube created a permanent record of themselves that outlives any terms of service they clicked on. Fast forward to September 2024, and the entire board of directors quits. Not one person, all of them all at once, but the worst part is that then the founder buys back her own company through a nonprofit, while state attorney generals are screaming in court about genetic privacy violations. Now, most people thought 23andMe sold DNA kits, $50 to $200, spit in a tube, find out you're 4% Scandinavian. Great. But we were wrong. Those kits were sold at a loss. The product wasn't the test. The product was that database and all the information on us. 23andMe was founded back in 2006 by Ann Wojcicki, and she was the primary CEO and original founder of 3. It was a personal genomics company. She started to empower consumers with direct-to-consumer DNA testing. It had never been done before. And look, the plan was to monetize the genetic data through partnerships they built with big pharma and with research deals, which works great until nobody trusts you anymore. No trust means no partnerships. No partnerships means no revenue. But the costs of running it, the costs stayed exactly the same. So the board did the math and then they ran. And again, that wasn't drama. That's just executives running. They're reading financial statements that we didn't get to see. 6 months later, the company files for bankruptcy. Exactly like they predicted. Have you ever noticed how executives have a sixth sense for when the Titanic's about to dip? They don't wait for the iceberg. right? They don't wait for the water to fill up the boat. They see the iceberg way ahead of time and they pivot. March 2025, Chapter 11 gets filed and the former CEO resigns. The company quietly changes its name then during the bankruptcy proceedings to the following: Chrome Holding Company. So now our DNA is now a line item under assets available for sale. States attorney generals in multiple states like California, New York, Texas, and the like are losing their freaking minds. They are screaming about genetic privacy laws, about consent, and how you can't just auction off millions of people's biological code. The bankruptcy judge says the sale can proceed anyway. And then, in the most Silicon Valley move in history, in July 2025, the former founder, Ann Wojcicki, creates a nonprofit called TTAM. And that TTAM Research Institute wins the auction for all of the data. So she essentially buys back her own company assets at a huge discount right through the bankruptcy court. So your genetic data just got transferred to an entity you never agreed to do business with. And when the revenue model collapsed, that inventory got transferred to the new owner, the former CEO, under the guise of her new nonprofit. And that was done by the bankruptcy court over the objections of all the state regulators. And all of that is still being argued by $800 an hour lawyers in conference rooms none of us will ever be in. So, what happens to the DNA test samples now? Well, their own privacy disclosures say you get to control whether your saliva sample is stored, biobanked, or discarded after testing. That's pretty good, right? And we'll show you how to do that right at the end. You can request destruction at any time too. Obviously, once that's done, it's irreversible. During the bankruptcy sale, they committed to maintaining existing privacy policies and user choices, like when we said we wanted it deleted or opt out of selling it. That promise is only on paper, which is better than nothing, but it's not the same as the legal obligation that your DNA can never become an asset. You pay them to collect evidence of your own biological surveillance. They prove that privacy promises have an expiration date right around the Chapter 11 filing. So when someone asks, what's the worst thing that could ever happen to my data? Here's our new answer. If it becomes inventory, it can get auctioned off to the public. It'll get transferred to an entity you never agree to do business with. And that breach back in 2023, that was just gasoline. The real fire was the business model from the beginning. At the heart of this all is something that was actively marketed, actively sold to people that simply wanted to know their heritage. An entity that promises to honor old privacy policies, but has no legal obligation to do so. The same entity that just bought back all your DNA at a fire sale price and is now hunting for big pharma partners. Do you see what happened here? Look, you know what survives bankruptcy court? Creditors. You know what doesn't? The terms of service and the privacy that you thought you had. Do you ever notice how the legal obligation of we'd never sell your data only matters when the company is still alive? Privacy policies don't survive Chapter 11. A judge decides your database and pays creditors now. Your privacy, the consent you gave, it's cute. Court says otherwise. And here we are, March 2026, still in active Chapter 11 proceedings. Millions of people's DNA, permanent, unchangeable, sitting in a database controlled by a company that went bankrupt. The product was never the test. It was you. When corporate directors flee like that, they're not being dramatic. They are reading financial statements we didn't get to see. They knew the company was circling the drain and they wanted their names off the paperwork before the crash. 23andMe will go down as one of the biggest frauds since Fire Festival and Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. Why did they go under in the first place? turns out you can only sell someone their own spit once. There's no subscription model for your genome, and you can't upsell mitochondrial DLC. So you actually want to do something about this. Good. Here's how you delete your DNA from a bankrupt company's database before some judge decides it's worth something to somebody you've never heard of. Go log in to 23andMe. Go over to the middle section, you'll see the account settings. Find the 23andMe data section. Download your data first if you want it. Then scroll over to where it says permanent deletion and confirm through the email they will send you. And that's it. 4 steps to undo the one thing none of us should have ever done in the first place. And here's the fine print, because there is always fine print. Deleting your account stops future use. It does not rewind the clock on the research that's already been done through de-identified data. Some of it stays where the law says it has to stay. You're not erasing history, but you are stopping the bleeding of future use of your DNA, which is great. But also this, if you opted in to sharing in research at any point, go revoke that too, separately right now. Because clicking I agree on a privacy policy years ago is still technically consent until you say otherwise. Look, here's the truth about your DNA sample sitting in a tube somewhere. You can request that they destroy it. They say you've always had that right. Once it's gone, no takebacks, which is exactly the kind of permanence they never warned you about when they were selling you ancestry trivia for 99 bucks. The buyer now pinky promises to honor the old privacy policies. That's the promise on paper. But have you ever noticed how we promise hits different when the company that made it doesn't even exist anymore? Go delete your data today.